I'm Yash, and I'm an aspiring business analyst. Today, I'm going to explain to you how you, as a business owner, can minimize your costs by using the MS Excel application. To minimize costs, the business owner needs to make the right choice of inputs, which are resources like raw materials needed for the production of a final good. Cost minimization on MS Excel is also an important skill for aspiring business owners, so this might be useful to understand how decisions are made in a business. So let's see an example of cost minimization on MS Excel. Consider a scenario where you produce feed for livestock. Your business produces feed for livestock, and you need a certain mix of ingredients in your food to maintain nutritional standards. The need to include certain mix arises from the basic nutrition requirements laid down by authorities or government agencies to ensure the maintenance of milk producing levels in cows. This essentially means that you need to provide the kind of nutrition that allows cows to produce milk for their owners. Despite all the input mix restrictions, we have to minimize costs to achieve both the objective of providing a high quality product and to maximize profits. Now, let me explain to you simply what an input is. An input is essentially, in our case, would be something like a wheat midlands or DDGs, distillers dried grains, or corn silage. These are essentially inputs that'll be, or ingredients that'll be mixed together to produce the final product. That's why they're called inputs, because they are used in the production process. So let's see how we can find the minimum cost by entering this data into the computer. So the first step, as seen on this screenshot of an MS Excel page, is the entry of all the data that we require. So we call this the compilation page. This is because we essentially compile all the data that we have, whether it's the costs of the inputs or the quantities of nutrients like phosphorus, vitamins that they provide to the customer, which in our case is livestock. So you don't need to be concerned about the two separate entries. This is just a screenshot from a livestock company. So we need to concern ourselves with the second compilation. This compilation has some added elements to it. It has the constraints side, and it also has the objective cells. The constraints are the limits beyond which you cannot employ the inputs. So this essentially means that beyond the quantity of 29.8 units, we cannot use the nutrient TDN simply because we do not have access to more than that. Cells A18 to H18 are the objective cells. So this is essentially the business owner or you telling the computer that our objective is to minimize costs. So please try to minimize the cost that I have mentioned in the Excel page. That is essentially what we're telling the computer. Now let's see how you can take this information and run the final linear program. This is the solver parameters page. This is arrived by selecting the data option on your computer and selecting the solver. So the solver is an engine that runs the program for you. It essentially crunches the numbers, as we say in business jargon, to provide the minimum cost. Now, we can see that in the set objective box, we've entered our cost minimization objective as highlighted in the previous slide. We also enter the changing variable cells. The changing variables in our case are the nutrients. So we simply select all the quantities of nutrients that we had compiled and we put it into our changing variable cells. We can either type it in or we can simply drag and select it and it will automatically show up in the by changing variable cells. Now it's important to remember that for all these entries, we must enter dollar signs before the B and the 18 or any numerical and letter to ensure that our computer freezes those values By freezing, we essentially mean that the computer uses those same values for all the calculations it does. So it doesn't go down to the next cell for the very same calculation. Now the constraints, as mentioned earlier, are the limits to the supply of ingredients, and we can add those into our program by simply selecting the add option and entering the cell numbers of our constraints. Next, we can select the simplex LP option. The reason we're selecting this option in our select a solving method section is because we want the computer to run a linear program for us. This linear program is effective because it provides the results in terms of the answers of the final value, which is the value of the minimum cost that we need to consider, and also shows the way the model will change depending on how we change our constraints. So once we've compiled all this data, let's select the solve option. After selecting the solve option, the computer will generate two reports for us. The first one being the answer report and the second the sensitivity report. This should show up on your screen automatically after you press the solve button. The answer report will look somewhat like this. Our main parameter is the cost minimization. So under objective cells, we can see that 4.73 is our minimum cost of producing 1 unit of the final product. You can find this under the final value section in the objective cell box of your answer report. So our most important piece of information is that 4.73 is the minimum cost that we can achieve by keeping in mind our quality goals as well. The next variable cells box shows the proportions in which we have to use the ingredients to eventually achieve our minimum cost. So in order to achieve minimum cost of 4.73, we need to use 20.33 units of AH, 13.0 units of CG. So that's what the computer is telling us here. The next report that's valuable to us is the sensitivity report. That looks somewhat like what you see on your screen right now. The variable cells box, as seen over here under B6, is telling us that we as a business are allowed to increase our use of a resource AH or allowable decrease of resource AH to still maintain our current minimum cost. So if we increase our AH or CG values by the number mentioned under the allowable increase section, we will not be harming our business. So our minimum costs will remain the same. The next important value to consider is the shadow price values. This can be seen under the constraints section of your sensitivity report. The shadow value tells us that as long as we stay within our allowable increase and decrease values, we can further minimize our costs by 0.06 or make our situation worse by increasing costs by 0.06, depending on whether we increase or decrease our use of the inputs. So we essentially want to increase the use of inputs to maximize our potential of production to ensure that we're producing the most we can, at the same time minimizing costs even further. It tells you how your change in decision making will impact your business. You can customize this program for your own business needs by simply replacing the inputs mentioned here with the inputs that your business uses. So I hope you found this video useful, and thank you for watching.